Welcome to Whispers of History. Tonight, you're gently invited into the softened glow of centuries past, where whispers of oil lamps flicker against old stone, and time moves not in hours, but in cups of tea and the creak of wooden sandals. This is not just a history lesson, it's a slow unraveling of the way the world once slept. Specifically in the heart of the Ottoman Empire, where midnight naps were not an accident but an art. Tonight's journey, Ottoman sleep schedules and the art of the midnight nap. So before you drift too far into the thread count of your own pillows, do remember to like and subscribe to this sleepy little corner of YouTube. It helps us keep telling stories slowly, just the way they happened, probably. Leave a comment with your location and the current time where you are. We're curious who else out there is not quite asleep in this shared lull of moonlight. Now let's ease into tonight's journey. You walk through an Istanbul alleyway that isn't awake and isn't quite asleep. It smells of bread baked 5 hours ago and dust that's never been disturbed. The stone beneath your feet remembers sandals, hooves, prayers. The air is heavy but quiet, the kind of silence that only old cities know how to wear. It is around 2 hours after sunset. That would be the final prayer of the day. But unlike your modern world where you collapse after Netflix asks if you're still watching, this world treats the night as just intermission. You're in the 17th century, and everyone here is taking a nap on purpose. Ottoman sleep patterns didn't flow in eight-hour blocks. Instead, most people practiced what we now call biphasic sleep. A first sleep from around 9 p.m. to 1 a.m., then a wakeful period of an hour or two, followed by a second sleep until sunrise. It wasn't insomnia, it was culture. And in that strange middle hour, the Ottoman homes would stir with gentle life. Lanterns flicked back on, carpets unrolled for quiet prayer. Elderly uncles shuffled out to the courtyard to recite poetry with themselves. Some even cooked. You hear a soft clatter behind a window, the sound of a small brass teapot meeting a low flame. Yes, people brewed tea between naps. It was never too late for tea, especially sage tea, believed to keep one's liver in line and your soul calm, though no one could quite explain how. A dog barks once, you jump mildly, the city yawns. Historians still debate whether this biphasic rhythm was born of religious discipline or simply the architectural heat trap that was Ottoman housing. Probably both. Probably neither, but it worked. Some homes even had a dedicated sleeping corner, with thick mattresses they rolled in and out like yoga mats with ancestral trauma. Think fewer alarms, more rhythm. As you walk past an open courtyard, you glimpse a man stretching like a sleepy cat, then casually beginning to write letters under lamplight. His sleep break is his creative hour. Meanwhile, his wife is stirring honey into warm milk in the kitchen. Midnight milk is a whole mood here. And just so you know, you probably won't make it through this day, but that's the point. You're seated now in a tucked-away tea house that technically isn't open, but also never really closes. A man in a vest embroidered with pomegranates pours you something that smells like clove and old secrets. It's not caffeine, it's nostalgia. While you sip, it burns politely. All around you, others emerge in this velvet hour. An old scholar wraps his shawl, opens a cracked leather book, and mutters something about stars. A tailor is sketching by candlelight not because he has to, but because this is when his mind is sharpest. Between the sleeps, clarity comes. Welcome to the Ottoman midnights. This quiet watch was often seen as a sacred time, perfect for prayer, study, even romance. Some love letters were penned exclusively between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m., as if daylight was too honest, too harsh for delicate truths. You hear the scratch of a reed pen against parchment. A young boy is copying lines of Nick calligraphy, supervised by a sleepy father who drinks as if it's Red Bull. The boy yawns, his ink smudges. Nobody minds. Outside, the moon hangs like it's watching you in particular. A muezzin on a distant minaret clears his throat, not to call to prayer yet, but perhaps just to feel himself inside the night. The echo slips down stone alleys and brushes against your spine. A woman selling sesame bread strolls quietly down the lane, a woven tray on her head. You'd think no one would want bread at 2 a.m. You'd be wrong. It's called night buns, and yes, they're baked especially for the in-between hours. They're warm, soft, and completely irrational by modern standards. But nothing here is rushed. Nothing must make sense to matter. And just as you begin to feel fully awake in this dream hour, you notice the same man from before rolling his mattress back out. He has prayed, he has written, he has steeped his leaves. Now it's time to sleep again. As a cat curls around your ankle, you do not move. Historians still argue whether biphasic sleep disappeared due to industrial lighting or imported clocks. Maybe people just got tired of being well rested. But in this sliver of history, when rest came in thoughtful halves and not frenzied wholes, you understand it. The boy's ink has dried, the tea has cooled. The stars above Istanbul hum faintly with knowing. And so your own eyes flutter. But don't worry. There's plenty more night to come. You wake not abruptly, but like a tide pulling away from shore. The kind of waking where you're not sure if you ever truly slept or just became softer. Somewhere between two dreams, the world kept turning, and now it's just before the dawn prayer. Well, the sky is not black anymore. It's blue with commitment issues. A faint breeze wanders in from the smelling of fish, figs, and damp stone. You stretch, the city stretches with you. The Ottomans understood this part of night as the time of restraint. It's not quite morning, not quite night. Food is put away. Lamps are turned low. Those who fast prepare for stillness. Those who work prepare their shoes. And those who wrote poetry about longing and curtains and love, that would be most of them, put their pens down and begin to pray. You walk past a fountain still dripping from its evening wash. The marble is cold beneath your fingertips, and somewhere deep inside it, you swear a pigeon is laughing. The baker is already awake, dusting his hands with flour in a rhythm older than most dynasties. He's not alone. Ottoman cities followed seasonal work schedules, which meant many professions started at different times throughout the year. Bread makers in summer began earlier than those in winter, because sleep had to bow to heat and hunger alike. And weirdly, coffee, still not a morning thing yet. Despite what your conditioned mind expects, coffee didn't catch on in the Ottoman world until the 16th century, and even then it was considered more of a social performance than a breakfast fix. The morning drink of choice was usually warm water, or lemon water, if you were feeling fancy and slightly scurvy adjacent. Historians still wonder how people functioned so early with no espresso. Some suspect they were simply better at pretending to be awake than we are. You pass a mosque where an imam in a long cloak finishes brushing his beard before stepping onto the stone pulpit. The call to prayer is not a shout, but a song sung directly to the clouds. You stop and listen. It's the kind of sound that makes your heart lean forward. You wander into a street so narrow it could be a hallway. It smells faintly of sheep wool, ink, and cumin. Your foot nudges something. It's a rolled-up sleeping mat, forgotten, or perhaps just resting between sleeps like everyone else. The air here feels like the in-between part of a sigh. Above you, wooden balconies lean forward like they're gossiping about your outfit. Behind one window, an old woman is braiding her hair. Her silver strands are longer than most fairy tales. She hums as she works, occasionally stopping to mutter something to the fig tree outside. You suspect she's winning the argument. This quiet moment is when most Ottoman households performed one of their most cherished rituals, the second sleep. After the brief, blessed wakefulness of midnight, people return to rest until sunrise or slightly after. This second sleep was shorter, gentler, and often filled with dreams believed to be more spiritual, something closer to divine male. And it was also when your dreams were more likely to include taxes. Yes, Ottoman households often assigned part of this morning doze to thinking, planning out business, remembering debts, or composing letters they would write after tea. You know, productive dreaming, the kind your alarm clock doesn't believe in. You catch a whiff of something rich and buttery. A young boy is sneaking out with a still-warm tray of a flaky pastry stuffed with pistachios and cream, allegedly invented to be eaten right after second sleep. He's barefoot, giggling, dodging cats like a sugar thief. He offers you a piece. You take it because in this world, carbs don't count if they're from the past. Somewhere down the alley, a rooster loses its mind with confidence. No one's impressed. A man in a long brown cloak opens his shop's wooden shutters. He sells books bound in leather, stitched with care, sometimes red. He nods at you, wordlessly acknowledging that you, too, have survived the hours that exist outside of time. And just like that, the light changes. Historians still debate whether second sleep faded because of city noise, changing jobs, or yes, those cursed industrial revolutions. Probably all three. You could blame the factory bell or maybe just the invention of the breakfast meeting. But here, in this narrow street beneath the humming fig tree, time is still soft. Time bends. You don't rise with an alarm. You rise with the smell of flatbread and the sound of sandals slapping stone. You don't rush, you remember. And that, maybe, is the real art of the midnight nap. You blink slowly as morning spreads itself across the rooftops, careful not to wake anyone too quickly. The sunlight tiptoes over domes and courtyards, painting everything gold, then thinking better of it softens to honey. You walk past a just opening its great wooden doors. Steam snakes out like it's trying to escape work. Inside, marble floors glisten and echo with the sound of warm water being poured into copper basins. Someone hums a tune that's been hummed since before vowels were trendy. In the Ottoman world, mornings were less about rushing and more about resetting. After second sleep, many began their day not with a meeting or a to-do list, but with a public bath, a ritual so deeply ingrained in social life that skipping it was considered mildly barbaric and frankly offensive to your pores. You dip a hand into the fountain out front. The water is warm, mineral-rich, and blessed by the whispers of 10,000 grandmothers. A towel boy scurries past you, barefoot and barely awake, clutching a pile of linen like it's national treasure. From the corner of a barber has set up shop. He sharpens a blade with rhythmic strokes, then gestures you over. You decline politely. He shrugs as if to say, "Your loss, friend. These cheeks aren't going to exfoliate themselves." Across the street, a spice seller arranges his cart. Cinnamon, cumin, crushed rose petals, all piled into miniature hills like fragrant. He waves you over with a gesture so practiced it could be choreography. You lean in. He tells you quite seriously that saffron is better for the nerves than sleep itself. You buy some not because you believe him, but because his hands shake a little and you like his beard. Historians still argue whether early Ottoman cities were designed for waking slowly or if people simply refused to be rushed. What's known is that urban planning included courtyards for morning gatherings and shaded alleys for pre-noon commerce. Cities breathed before they bustled. And you, it seems, are breathing too. You sip the last of your lemon water. The taste is sharp like memory. The sun finally reaches the ground. You find yourself wandering down a market path, now fully awake, though no one is in a hurry. There's motion, yes, but it's the unbothered kind. Merchants unroll fabric like revealing secrets. A rooster is still crowing as if it just got the memo. Somewhere a baby is crying and no one is panicking. It's all very human. This time of day, known as or bird time, falls after sunrise but before the noon call to prayer. It's when shops officially open, students head to, and households begin their daily rhythms with a slow drum beat. You stop beside a woman selling herbs in bunches too large for logic. Mint, basil, lemon balm, she insists you take some for your pocket so your shadow smells kind. You do, it works. As a camel passes decorated in bells and velvet, led by a merchant with sun-leathered skin and a voice like gravel in a prayer bowl. He greets you without pausing. You nod back, wondering what kind of dream life you've stumbled into. Nearby, children chase a chicken through an alley with an enthusiasm not even the chicken questions. You smile. The chicken does not. In one corner, a man sits cross-legged beside a scroll he's illuminating by hand. His fingers are stained with ink. He's detailing a medieval sleep manual, one that advises people to lie on their right side, avoid sleeping after meals, and never, under any circumstance, sleep with envy in the heart. You feel personally called out. He looks up at you. "Midnight is when the soul walks," he says, before returning to his careful brushwork. Historians still wonder whether the Ottomans believed dreams could be messages or merely entertainment from God. Many dream journals from the time were treated like sacred texts, shared between friends like borrowed books, with annotations and all. You pause beside a fountain where a cat is licking the stone for minerals. The water here is cold, pure, and older than empire. A woman dips her jug beside the cat, unbothered by its royal entitlement. And then, almost as a whisper, the call to prayer echoes through the street. It's not obligatory, but people pause anyway, some to pray, some to look up at the sky, and some just to remember how to be still. You sit down on a step warmed by the sun. A merchant hands you a date and a nod. And for a moment, with the scent of basil in your pocket, saffron in your pouch, and sleep still clinging to your bones, you think this might be the most awake you've ever felt. You lean back against the sun-warmed stone, not quite ready to move. Around you, the city exhales into its daily pace like a caravan finally finding its stride. No one is rushing. Even the dust takes its time falling back to the ground. Across the street, a man rolls a handcart filled with cucumbers, green, spotless, aligned like soldiers in a slightly confused army. He sings a tune about a lost ring and a jealous neighbor. You can't follow the words, but the melody understands you. You follow him partly because you're curious, partly because there's no reason not to. You pass a street where the shadows still sleep. A cat darts out from behind a curtain with a mouse in its mouth and an expression that says, "This is personal." You arrive at a square. It's not grand or royal, just ordinary, which makes it sacred. Laundry flutters like gossip between buildings. A shoemaker arranges his tools as if they're guests at a dinner party. Someone is arguing gently with a goat. This time of day, the Ottomans often called Sabah the morning work hours. Not to be confused with your modern 9 to 5, this window was flexible, forgiving, and fiercely local. Work started after the morning had proven itself. Nobody trusted a dawn that hadn't settled. You hear the soft thud of looms from an open window. Inside, a family weaves silk the color of crushed roses. The mother hums a lullaby while her daughter knots patterns with fingers that don't even need to look. It's the same melody her grandmother sang during the same task, part lullaby, part code. Historians still debate how much of Ottoman craftsmanship was learned formally versus absorbed through breath and muscle memory. Most likely, a mix, like soup made from bones, whispers, and repetition. You turn a corner and find a young man writing his shop sign in Arabic calligraphy. He isn't open yet, he's just making the sign more poetic. You ask what it says. He smiles. It says, "We sell dates, but sometimes you'll get a story instead. You buy one of each." By the city hums, not like a machine, but like a garden full of bees who took a poetry class. The clink of copper, the murmur of gossip, the occasional angry pigeon, all blend into a symphony without a conductor. You stop at a water seller's stand, a wooden cart shaded by linen. He offers a ladle dipped from a goatskin bag. The water is shockingly cold. You sip. It tastes like a forgotten mountain and makes you feel like you've never truly hydrated before. Ottomans believed deeply in the charity of water. Many homes, mosques, and even private estates built public fountains meant solely for quenching the thirst of strangers. Some were elaborate, carved with verses about mercy. Others were little more than a jug on a windowsill. But the idea was clear: water was not a product, it was a kindness. One fountain nearby features a lion's head that dribbles a steady stream into a marble bowl. A note in hand-painted script reads, "Drink slowly, as the lion is patient." You watch an elderly man fill a jug and pour some for the birds. He doesn't acknowledge your presence, but you nod anyway, as if to thank him for existing. The sun now casts confident shadows. The day is fully alive, but this isn't the frantic pace of a modern city. Ottoman mornings were often designed with intermissions. People pause to recite verses, sketch ideas, peel fruit slowly. One tailor swears he only cuts thread after sipping a small cup of quince sherbet. He claims it steadies his fingers and frightens away evil customers. Historians still debate how many of these rituals were real and how many were invented as excuses for delay. Either way, it worked. Ottoman productivity looked suspiciously like patience wearing nice shoes. You pass a school where boys recite aloud, each line a little louder than the last. The teacher taps a cane, not to punish but to keep rhythm. A donkey tied outside seems unimpressed with the entire curriculum. You pause by a baker's stall where warm is stacked in golden spirals. You buy one, tear it in half, and hand the rest to a child selling lavender. She says thank you with a bow more regal than any sultan. And as the market clock strikes noon, not with a chime but with a shadow reaching the other side of the street, you realize, oh, this city never hurries, it remembers too much for that. You hear it before you see it, the slow, rising call to the midday prayer blooming like a wave over the rooftops. The sound weaves itself through olive trees, overhanging rugs, past sleeping cats, and into the deeper corners of your mind. The time bends again. In the Ottoman Empire, this prayer marked the true middle of the day, not noon by your wristwatch, but the spiritual hinge around which everything turned. It was the moment for pausing, not producing. You find a low stone wall and sit. The sun is warm on your back. Across the way, a group of men wash their hands, faces, and feet at a fountain built into the mosque wall. They move slowly, precisely, like a ceremony disguised as routine. You watch them enter the mosque, sandals left at the door in neat rows. A few latecomers shuffle in, heads bowed, shoulders relaxed. No one glares, there's no penalty for being late to peace. A shadow falls over you. A tea vendor with a tray balanced on one hand offers a glass tinted red with hibiscus. You nod, he sets it beside you without a word. It tastes like flowers read poetry into your mouth. While prayers rise behind the mosque walls, the outside world becomes quiet. Not silent, just still. Even the wind waits its turn. This hour was sacred not just in religion but in rhythm. Government offices would pause. Markets softened their calls. Courtyard homes grew silent, their inner doors closed, their fountains speaking in softer tones. And if you were a scholar or a poet or a merchant with flexible ethics, this was prime time for the most Ottoman of all activities, the midday nap. Yes, a second nap, not a long one, just enough to remember who you are. Historians still puzzle over how anyone got anything done. But somehow, they built empires and minarets between naps, cups of tea, and extended metaphors. A fig falls from a tree nearby, you pick it up. It's warm from the sun, you take a bite. Oh, it tastes like a patience. You're inside a shop now, tucked between a silversmith stall and a pile of rugs that might actually be a house in disguise. The shop smells of cedar, dried apricots, and fresh ink. It's a bookbinder's workshop, where the tools of the trade are arranged with quiet affection. Presses, threads, burnishers, each with their own worn-in nickname, probably. A young apprentice carefully places gold leaf onto a leather spine, tongue poking slightly from concentration. Oh, he looks at you embarrassed. It's supposed to say treatise on the stars, he whispers, but I think I misspelled treatise. You nod gravely, stars will forgive you. He smiles. As afternoons in the Ottoman world often return to quiet work. After streets would bloom again slowly. But for many artisans, especially the writers, calligraphers, and scholars, this was the golden hour of focus. Not loud focus, just warm. You watch a calligrapher at the back of the shop dip his pen into a well of indigo. His writing is less like words and more like dancing shadows. He's copying an ancient text about sleep and memory. The night whispers things the day forgets. It begins. He pauses mid-sentence, looks up, and says, "Did you know the prophet once said dreams are 1/46th of prophecy?" Well, you shake your head. Well, he says, shrugging, that's why I nap with a notebook. Nearby, a street musician plays a flute. The sound curls in through the window, too tired to be cheerful, too lovely to ignore. It turns the dust in the room into choreography. Historians still debate whether artistic afternoons were a luxury of the elite or common among skilled workers. What's clear is that cities like Istanbul were built not just from stone, but from intentional slowness. You glance at the shelves, full of half-finished bindings, forgotten love poems, and recipes mistaken for philosophy. Each one was written during someone's in-between hour. The calligrapher lifts his brush again, smiling to himself. "Second naps make better ideas," he mutters. And outside, the sky softens again, already preparing for the slow slide into evening. You step outside and the light has shifted again, no longer sharp, no longer sleepy, just amber. The shadows have stretched like cats in the sun, reaching across cobblestones, peeking into windows, curling at the base of doorways. It's the kind of light that makes everything look painted. You move with it. The city at this hour doesn't walk, it strolls. The breeze carries with it the smell of cumin, figs split open by heat, and the lingering sweetness of syrup from pastries left too close to a window. Someone is grilling lamb skewers nearby. The scent follows you like a promise. It's the late afternoon, known in the Ottoman rhythm as the second-to-last prayer of the day, a soft boundary between labor and leisure. You pass a group of boys chasing a hoop made of bent wire. They shout and stumble, their laughter rising above the rooftops like pigeons startled into song. An old man sits on a bench polishing a brass lamp. He isn't in a hurry, not even a little. He hums something ancient, pausing now and then to inspect the curve of the metal with the seriousness of a poet editing a final draft. You get the feeling he's been doing this for decades and still doesn't think he's quite mastered it. You lean against the wall beside him. He doesn't look at you, but after a moment he says, "Oh, the trick is not to finish too fast. You rush and the shine leaves early." You nod, unsure whether he's talking about lamps or life. The late afternoon was often used for finishing whatever was started before lunch, closing the shop, weighing the spices, stitching the last thread. But it was also when neighbors leaned over balconies to gossip, when children recited memorized verses in courtyards, and when housewives began preparing the tea tray that meant everything was finally slowing down. A woman with flour on her hands leans out of a second-story window and pours water onto the street below, brushing away dust and cooling the stone for the evening's return. This was a common ritual in Ottoman homes, a symbolic cleaning of the day's footprints, an invitation for the night to arrive fresh. And somewhere, as the sun begins to yawn its way down, the first teacups clink. Historians still argue whether time had an official closing bell or if the culture simply knew when to stop. The consensus: no bells needed. Ottoman life was lived in tune with the sky. You catch sight of a man scribbling something onto parchment as he walks, his pen tucked into a fig leaf, his sandals flapping like applause. You ask him what he's writing. "The letter to my cousin," he says, "but I always write better when I walk." You believe him, the city believes him too. The shadows have shifted again. The light fades just a little, a quiet is coming. And you are still here. Now the sky is all gold and plum, and the rooftops look like they're holding their breath. This is the hour Istanbul was made for. You make your way toward the waterfront. It glows, reflecting the last sunlight in broken pieces. The looks like it's remembering something sad but lovely. Boats bob gently in the distance. Seagulls drift, no longer screeching, just gliding like the day has earned its hush. The city prepares for the evening prayer. Unlike the gentle roll of earlier hours, this moment feels like a bow being tied. The day is ending and everyone seems to know it. Vendors begin packing up. Bread carts roll away with wheels that squeak like closing doors. A man sweeps his stoop in smooth, meditative arcs, as if brushing away not dirt but noise. You sit on a low wall beside a man stringing a fishing net. He doesn't fish anymore, he says, but he still makes the nets because his hands don't know how to stop. His fingers move like memory. Well, you'd be surprised what you catch when you stop fishing, he says, then offers you an apricot. You take it, it's perfect, warm, soft, a little too sweet, just like this hour. In homes across the city, iftar tables are being set even if it's not Ramadan. Ottomans didn't need a holy month to honor the sunset. Evening meals were a gentle ritual all year round: bread, olives, lentil soup, yogurt with herbs. Simple, yes, but never rushed. A woman in a blue scarf carries a tray with 4 glasses of water and a bowl of dates to her front stoop. She's not waiting for family, she's placing it there for a tradition of generosity called a meaning to offer without asking why. You take a glass. She nods. Historians still puzzle over how this generosity scaled in such a vast empire. But many believe that the Ottomans didn't see hospitality as a virtue. It was simply the default mode of being human. As the muezzin's voice rises once more, there's a softness to it now. A melody poured like honey into the folds of the sky. You close your eyes, not out of sleepiness, but reverence. The breeze cools. Lanterns flicker to life one by one, like stars deciding to join the conversation. And in the hush between the day and the night, you feel it. Not the end of time, but the pause before another dream begins. The sun has finally stepped aside. What's left behind isn't darkness, it's a velvet hush, stitched with the orange glow of lanterns and the faint clink of teacups. You find yourself in a small garden behind a tea house, its entrance hidden behind 2 olive barrels and a cat that won't move unless bribed. You bribe it with a scrap of it moves reluctantly. You pass. The garden is quiet but not empty. A handful of older men sit around a low table sipping in tulip-shaped glasses. One of them is playing backgammon. The clicking of the dice sounds like someone typing very slowly in a dream. You're invited to sit not with words but with a slight shift of the bench and a soft, unbothered glance. Ayuza said, "No one asks who you are. No one expects a story. You exist, therefore you are welcome." Evening in the Ottoman Empire wasn't an epilogue, it was a second act. A time when stories emerged from the walls and danced around the feet of night. Lanterns were lit not just for light, but for atmosphere. The flicker of flame on glass was considered part of the architecture of the hour. You notice one lantern hanging slightly crooked, its flame leaning against the glass like it's eavesdropping. Moths circle it, drunk on nostalgia. The boy arrives with a tray of roasted chickpeas and salted plums. You take a handful. The salt hits the roof of your mouth just as someone at the table begins reciting a poem by heart, something about longing, letters left unread, and a woman whose eyes were the color of dusk. You don't catch every word, that's fine. The poem wasn't meant to be understood, it was meant to be felt. This was the hour when oral storytelling took over. Men and women, literate or not, passed down tales with the rhythm of lullabies and the conviction of prophecy. Some stories were about lost love, some about heroic ancestors, and some about that time a neighbor's goat ruined a wedding and no one's forgiven it since. Historians still argue whether these stories were accurate or just embroidered truths. But embroidery, after all, is an Ottoman specialty. You look up, the moon is rising behind a cluster of rooftops, balanced perfectly between two minarets. It looks less like a celestial body and more like a quiet supervisor making sure everyone is where they should be. Someone nearby strikes a match. A pipe is lit. The scent of apple tobacco curls through the air like a question with no urgency for an answer. Then the cat, its back sleeping on your foot, as if to say you're part of the evening now. Later, though you're not sure how much later, because clocks don't seem to matter anymore, you're walking again. The garden has emptied. The city is quieter now, not asleep, just whispering. You wander into a residential quarter. The homes are old, wooden, slightly tilted from years of leaning into each other's stories. Light pours from lattice windows, casting patterned shadows across the street like rugs unfurled for night to walk on. Behind one open window, you hear a lullaby, soft, slow, and sung not for show but for function. A baby cries once, then stops. Even the cries here seem respectful. Ottoman homes were designed with sleep in mind, not just for nighttime, but all the hours sleep might decide to visit. Sleeping corners were separated from the main activity rooms by thick curtains or carved screens. Some rooms were shared, some not. And mattresses weren't permanent fixtures. They were laid out at night and rolled away each morning, like dreams you put away until later. You pass one such home where the mattresses have already been arranged, thin but layered, with embroidered covers and wooden pillows. An old woman sprinkles dried lavender into a bowl by the bedside. She believes it keeps nightmares away. Maybe she's right. She sees you, smiles, then closes the shutters softly like a punctuation mark on the day. You sit beside a public fountain carved into the wall of a nearby building. A plaque above it reads, "Sleep is mercy even to the just." It's in Ottoman Turkish, but someone's penciled a translation beneath it in very careful modern handwriting. The water drips, you count the rhythms. A nearby rooftop suddenly glows. Someone's lit an oil lamp, not electric. The flame flickers against a sheet drying in the breeze, turning it briefly into a glowing ghost. Then the wind shifts and it's just a sheet again. Historians still wonder how much sleep was communal in the empire. Records show multi-generational sleeping arrangements, especially during winter months, when bodies were warmth and family meant never truly being alone, not even in dreams. A boy passes yawning, his blanket dragging like a royal train. He nods at you as if to say, bedtime. And slowly, gently, the city agrees. The cats have settled, the stars have brightened. Even the air feels padded now, like it's walking barefoot. And somewhere in the distance, a single flute plays a note that fades before you're sure you heard it. The city sleeps, but it does not forget you. It keeps one eye open, a half-lidded, generous kind of watching, the kind that trusts but still wants to make sure you're tucked in. You keep walking. The moon has grown bolder now, shining as if it has a story to tell but doesn't want to interrupt. The sky above thee is silver, almost theatrical, with clouds sliding across it like velvet drapes in an old palace. A dog barks once somewhere in the distance. The bark doesn't expect a reply. You find yourself in a quieter district. Homes spaced further apart, gardens wider, air cooler. The sort of neighborhood where Ottoman officials, poets, and retired admirals might have once lived, surrounded by lemon trees and silences that cost nothing but were treasured like gold. You pass under an archway wrapped in flowering vines. On the wall beside it is an inscription carved in stone. Let the night enter as a guest, not a burden. You run your fingers over the worn text. Someone once cared enough to chisel peace into stone. Inside one home's courtyard, you glimpse a scene that feels staged by time itself. 3 generations gathered around a small brazier, coals glowing low, the father smoking, the mother sewing by lantern light, the grandmother half asleep with her fingers still in motion, and the youngest child curled like a question mark on a folded wool blanket. They are not speaking, they are simply being. This was not unusual in the Ottoman world. In fact, post-dinner togetherness was a nightly ritual. No agenda, no television, no urgency, just presence. Conversations ranged from politics to poultry, from philosophy to whose neighbor had the louder rooster. You remember the vendor earlier who said stars forgive spelling mistakes. You begin to think this whole city was written like that, carefully, but with room for human error. A cicada chirps, another answers, then silence. Even the insects take pauses here. You lean against a fig tree and close your eyes for a moment. Historians still debate how such a large empire kept its nights so gentle, how it managed to rule vast lands while remaining tender in its smallest corners. Maybe the secret was in the architecture, or maybe, just maybe, in the naps. Because in this world, rest was not laziness. It was design. And you're starting to understand the blueprint. You blink awake barely, but you haven't moved. The fig tree has wrapped a branch around your shoulder like a friend who doesn't mind your silence. Somewhere nearby, a bell rings, not for alarm but as a signal that preparations are starting. The pre-dawn meal, sacred especially during Ramadan, but quietly observed year-round by the early risers and spiritual night walkers. You follow the sound. A small kitchen near the corner of the mosque glows faintly. Inside, an old man in a vest carefully slices cucumbers, boils eggs, and hums a lullaby you heard earlier in the garden. It's always the same song, you realize. The city sings it in rounds. You are invited inside by a soft gesture, 2 fingers, not quite a wave. You enter. The kitchen smells of butter, mint, boiled lentils. Time slows again. You take a seat on a wooden stool that rocks slightly but forgives your weight. He places a ceramic plate before you. Nothing fancy. Bread, olives, soft cheese dusted with dried thyme, and a few figs. A small glass of rosehip tea follows. You thank him. He shrugs like it's the most obvious thing. Feeding someone before dawn is how you stay human. The 2 of you eat in near silence. He occasionally glances toward the sky as if watching for the earliest whisper of light. You ask him if he's always been a cook. No, he says, I used to write plays, but people still needed to eat. You ask if he misses writing. I still write, he says, but now the stove is the audience, and the eggs never boo. You smile into your tea. You didn't expect philosophy with your breakfast, but then again, nothing in this night has been ordinary. Historians still argue whether it was a social meal or a solitary one. In wealthier homes, it might have meant trays carried across courtyards, servants tiptoeing between sleep and duty. In humbler homes like this, it was just shared time. No one counted the courses, only the kindness. The old man finishes his tea, stands slowly, and begins to recite a prayer. You don't understand every word, but the cadence is soft, like something being returned rather than requested. You step outside. The stars are still out, but faint now, like they're folding up their notes for the night. The first threads of dawn stretch across the edge of the sky, and with them a thought. Maybe the night doesn't end. Maybe it just learns to glow differently. You walk back toward the fig tree. The city has begun to breathe differently now. The world is preparing to begin again. And you're already halfway through your next nap. The light is not full yet, just a breath of it. A cool blue whisper stretched across rooftops. You walk through streets that remember your steps even if they never claim them. There's something deeply intimate about Istanbul before the sun rises. It's a city without its performance face on, no bargaining, no boasts, just the quiet murmur of people getting ready to become people again. You pass a bakery just beginning to wake. The door is open, a crack, warm air leaking out like the scent of memory. Inside, a young apprentice in a flour-dusted robe is preparing dough for the flatbread that keeps nations standing upright. He yawns, then sings to himself, a half-forgotten lullaby turned kneading song. Ottoman mornings did not start with sirens or emails. They began in kitchens and courtyards, with the slap of dough, the clink of tin pitchers, the sound of water poured over cupped hands. You round a corner and find a woman sprinkling water over her doorstep. Again, this time it's scented with, "To bless the day," she says, smiling with all her wrinkles, "and to keep the flies in check." In her other hand, she holds a bundle of mint and basil, which she places beside the doorway. "So the air knows where to linger," she adds, as if speaking directly to the breeze. You nod, of course, everyone talks to the wind here, and the wind, it listens. Across the way, a boy unrolls a prayer rug and kneels beside his father under the rising light. They pray together, their backs to the sun, their silhouettes long and soft. The father recites softly and the boy follows half a beat behind. It's not about precision, it's about presence. This is the dawn prayer. In the Ottoman Empire wasn't just a moment, it was a philosophy. To rise before the world did, to align yourself before chaos knocked, was considered not saintly but sane. You see more people now trickling out of homes and side alleys, each carrying the scent of whatever sleep left behind. Lavender, lemon oil, the faint smell of smoke from a brazier. A merchant pushes his cart down the slope. It's covered with pomegranates. Not just for sale, he's offering slices to anyone who greets him kindly. You do, he nods and hands you a piece. The juice stains your fingers. Historians still discuss whether the Ottomans woke early out of devotion, discipline, or necessity. Likely all three. What's clear is that the day was not allowed to sneak up. You had to meet it at the door, preferably with fresh breath and brushed hair. You eat your pomegranate slowly, leaning on a wooden post outside a spice shop. You close your eyes for a moment. The morning is fully here now, but it hasn't interrupted the night, it has only completed it. You are walking uphill now, the incline gentle but honest. The city reveals itself in layers, domes above domes, roofs over roofs, pigeons resting like punctuation marks across the skyline. You reach a terrace that overlooks the water, where several men are seated on rugs, sipping tea from tiny cups and talking in half sentences. The topic changes every minute: taxes, dreams, the price of wool, and whether a certain fish tastes better in May or September. They make room for you with the slow shuffle of lifelong friends. Someone pours you tea before you ask. It tastes like sunrise, warm, alert, with just a hint of bitterness left over from yesterday. This terrace is known to locals as the ear of the sky. Legend says the Sultan once stood here to listen to the city breathe before making any royal decisions. You look around, you believe it. Below, the city is stretching its muscles. Markets are opening, horses clip along cobbled lanes. Curtains are being tied back, and a man is already shouting about honey as if he invented it. You sip your tea, a street cat jumps onto your lap without asking. It curls up, purrs once, and falls asleep with the authority of a government official. You accept this. The calligrapher nearby is setting up a small table for writing prayer cards. Intricate Arabic scripts brushed onto parchment in exchange for a coin or a blessing. He grins at you, missing one tooth. "Oh, you want your name written in moonlight?" he asks. You pause, then nod. Why not? He begins. The brush glides across paper, the ink flowing in spirals and angles, the letters blooming like petals. You watch, hypnotized. He finishes with a flourish, then blows on the ink. "Don't fold it," he says. "Moonlight doesn't like corners." You place the card in your pocket, careful not to bend it. Historians still argue whether Ottoman spiritual life was more structured than secular life, or if the two were simply. In this moment, under a sky slowly turning gold, it feels like there's no real difference. Faith is not a building, it's how you hold your tea. The city is awake now, fully, beautifully awake. But even in its motion, it remembers the rhythm of rest. And you're no longer a guest in this story. You're part of the furniture, slightly worn, lovingly placed, and just where you belong. The streets are wider here, and the sunlight falls more decisively, no longer creeping, but arriving like a guest who knows they're expected. You walk through a district that hums with the comfort of predictability. Shopkeepers arranging their wares in geometric displays, scent sellers wafting little clouds of musk and oud toward anyone curious enough to pause, and tailors sitting cross-legged in their windows, snipping thread like it owes them rent. You follow the scent of simmering lentils to a small side alley where an elderly woman has opened a street-side kitchen. There's no signboard, no menu, just a pot, a ladle, and 4 stools. She gestures to one. You sit. She serves you Ottoman-style lentil soup with a dash of paprika oil swirled on top. It's hot, earthy, and grounding, like drinking the memory of every grandmother who ever loved too fiercely. Next to you, a man is eating slowly while reading a tiny book of hadiths. He underlines phrases with a sharpened sliver of charcoal. You ask what he's reading. "Something about resting often," he replies with a shrug. "Even camels sit." You laugh quietly. He doesn't, he's serious. In Ottoman philosophy, there was a deep respect for measured motion. Days were structured, but within those structures, pauses were sacred. Commerce and spirituality, labor and leisure, they weren't at war. They simply alternated like breaths. The woman refills your bowl without asking. A child beside you is using a crust of bread as a spoon. No one corrects him. Bread, after all, was a moral object in the Ottoman world. Dropping it was considered tragic. Wasting it was borderline criminal. Some homes kept a separate box just for breadcrumbs, later given to birds or the poor. You finish your soup. The woman presses a square of cotton into your hand embroidered with a pomegranate. For your pocket, she says, pockets should hold something kind. The historians still debate whether such intimate hospitality was typical or romanticized by later writings. But when a stranger feeds you, teaches you, and blesses your pocket in the span of 15 minutes, you stop asking and start absorbing. You step back into the sunlight and realize you've forgotten what time it is. This, too, is a kind of freedom. You find yourself at the edge of an Islamic college tucked behind a crumbling archway lined with roses that grow as if they've never once asked permission. Inside the courtyard, a fountain bubbles gently beneath a fig tree, and clusters of students sit in circles around older men with eyebrows like commas. One teacher speaks slowly, occasionally pausing to let a breeze finish his sentence. He teaches Al, a kind of early psychology blended with theology, medicine, and philosophy. His students nod, scribble, then pause to think. It's not about passing, it's about understanding. You sit on a low stone bench shaded by grapevines. The leaves flicker in the light like green coins. A student beside you offers you a walnut. You crack it against the stone, and the two of you share it in silence. In Ottoman times, education wasn't hurried, especially not in places like this. Followed rhythms set not by semesters but by comprehension. A student might study one book for months, not for testing but for transformation. Understanding something too fast, the teacher says at one point, is like pouring water through silk. It passes through but leaves nothing behind. You write that down in your mind. Nearby, another group is studying dream interpretation, a legitimate scholarly discipline once taught alongside jurisprudence. The instructor recites from memory. To dream of walking a narrow bridge means a difficult decision is near. To dream of cool water is a good sign, unless your feet are wet. The students argue softly about what a broken spoon might signify. No one rushes to be right. The conversation is the lesson. Historians still analyze these schedules, fascinated by how little emphasis was placed on formal examinations. Some records suggest teachers would spend entire weeks on a single metaphor, because in Ottoman intellectual tradition, knowledge was more garden than ladder. Azanda you're a seed in the soil, sprouting quietly under a fig tree. The call to begins again, midday's reminder to pause. No one rushes to their feet. No one tells the breeze to be quiet. The teacher finishes his sentence. The students gather their books. A boy refills the fountain with a pitcher of cool water. And just as the day once again starts to pivot toward shadow, you find yourself thinking, maybe wisdom isn't hidden in complexity. Maybe it's just in living slowly on purpose. The air is heavier now, but not unpleasant. It's the kind of weight that feels like a thick quilt, comforting, not smothering. You step outside the inn onto a street that smells like cumin, soap, and the sharp wood of pencil shavings. A cart rolls past, carrying nothing but empty baskets. Its owner walks behind it whistling a tune so old it might have never been written down. You follow him for a few steps, not out of curiosity, but because it feels like the rhythm of the city is asking you to. The street is full again, but not noisy. You see people conversing with hands, shoulders, and eyebrow raises. A tailor lifts a bolt of fabric to the sunlight and squints as if asking the heavens for color approval. A man selling roasted chestnuts tosses one in the air, catches it behind his back and bows. No one's watching. He does it for himself. The breeze brings with it the scent of a musk-based perfume, subtle but steady. It lingers like a story you once heard at a gathering and can't quite retell. You pass by a bookseller who has arranged his wares not by topic but by mood. Books for thinking deeply about bread. Books to read while not understanding your dreams. Books that forgive you for not finishing them. You stop, he points to one bound in faded green leather. This one, he says, is for people who wake up at night just to think about something they said 5 years ago. You buy it without opening the covers. Further along, a public water fountain drips rhythmically into a copper basin. An elderly man is seated beside it on a bench, sharpening a small knife with a whetstone and whispering to himself. You think he's praying. Then you realize he's reciting recipes. Always lemon before salt, he mutters. Unless it's fish, then salt before lemon. You sit beside him, he hands you a slice of preserved orange peel. It's tart, slightly bitter, and unexpectedly satisfying. Keeps the tongue honest, he says. Historians still speculate on the deep relationship between Ottoman culinary rhythms and the structure of daily life. Meals weren't scheduled, they were sensed. Hunger was not to be ignored, but neither was it allowed to shout. There was a social choreography to food, where even snacks had etiquette and tea was timed like poetry. And in this city, full as it is with movement, there's always room for stillness. You look up at the mosque down the road. Its dome sits against the sky like a held breath, the minarets quiet for now, the courtyard full of shoes and sunlight. You walk past a carpet shop, where rows of rugs hang like tapestries of time. A young man unrolls one onto the cobbled street, then sweeps it slowly with a palm brush. His strokes are rhythmic, almost hypnotic. It's not dirty, he says when you glance at him, but it deserves attention. That line stays with you longer than you expect. You're standing now in a han, a traveler's inn tucked within the maze of Istanbul's commercial district. The courtyard is bustling in the way a beehive is, with purpose, not panic. Horses drink from a trough under the watchful gaze of their owners. Traders shout greetings across balconies. Fabric glows from open rooms like banners for invisible festivals. But even here, inside this heart of exchange and ambition, there's a thread of gentleness you can't ignore. The merchant brushes dust from a carpet not with impatience but affection. A baker carries a tray of sesame rings to a neighbor's stall without announcing it. A child weaves through the crowd holding a ceramic pitcher above her head like a crown. She doesn't spill a drop. You find a bench beneath a fig tree. Yes, another fig tree, and sit to watch the parade of ordinary wonder. The hand's caretaker, a man with shoulders shaped like question marks, sits beside you. We get people from all over, he says, but they all sleep the same. You raise an eyebrow. Flat on their back, mouth open, shoes kicked halfway across the room. Everyone wants to be important, but at night, we all just want to rest. He isn't wrong. You peek into one of the traveler rooms. It's sparse, a rug, a water jug, a low bed made of wool-stuffed cushions, but beside it, a small wooden box carved with care. Inside, dried lavender, a short candle, a smooth stone. The candle, you're told, is for reading. The lavender is for sleep. The stone, no one knows. Maybe it's just to hold, someone says. We all need something to hold. Ottoman inns didn't just provide a bed, they provided ritual. It was understood that after long travel, one needed not just food and shelter, but a moment to reconnect with the self. Sleep was not collapse, it was ceremony. As in many hands, a small prayer was carved into the doorframe. May your dreams be light and your return be lighter. You close your eyes for a moment, breathing in the scent of fig leaves and horses and clay. You imagine falling asleep in that little room, candle flickering, stone in hand. And suddenly the hum of the hand doesn't feel like noise. It feels like lullaby. Historians still discuss whether these touches were intentional or accidental. But even if no one planned the kindness, it's hard to argue with its presence. You rise slowly. The caretaker waves you off with a nod and a handful of dried apricots. You step back into the sunlight, and for the first time today, you notice it's started to lighten. The day is gently bowing toward evening. And you've been awake for hours. But somehow you've never felt closer to sleep. Afternoon folds itself carefully over the city, as if tucking it in for a soft, slow breath before dusk arrives with its promises. You walk downhill through a quiet residential lane where the cobblestones are uneven and the shadows have softened into a kind of second skin. Laundry flutters from one rooftop to another like friendly banners of truce. A woman laughs behind a wall. A kettle whistles in response. The wind here smells different, of rosemary, warm milk, and dust just beginning to remember rain. You pass a pair of girls drawing with chalk on the stone. They've divided the path into invisible kingdoms, arguing over who gets the sun and who gets the fig tree. Their language is half Ottoman Turkish, half imagination, and entirely diplomatic. They don't notice you, which means you've become part of the scenery. That's a compliment in this city. A man steps out of his front door carrying 2 glasses of bright pink and dusted with rose petals. One for him, one for whoever walks by. He offers it to you. You accept, sip, and feel a sudden rush of cool syrup and kindness. It's better when shared, he says, sitting on the stoop. Most things are. In Ottoman society, afternoon was rarely rushed. It was considered the folding time when labor winds down, meals are digested, and even thoughts seem to pause. In many neighborhoods, you could hear a collective quiet settle in the air, broken only by birds, breeze, or the far-off sound of someone rehearsing an oud. You sit with the man for a while, not speaking. He carves a sliver of melon with a small silver knife, hands you a piece. The moment is so unhurried it feels stolen from another century. People always ask what the empire built, he says at last. But I think the real success was that it remembered to sit down. You nod. Then stay sighted. Later, though, again, time here is less about numbers and more about mood. You're walking through a small cemetery. It's not hidden, not sad, just there. A quiet green pause between buildings. Cats sun themselves on the tombstones, and a vine has claimed one inscription like a soft green signature. The Ottomans built cemeteries in the middle of life, not away from it. They weren't fenced off or placed at the edge of towns. They were neighbors, reminders not of death, but of how well life could be lived before it ended. Each tombstone is carved with care. You notice turbans atop some denoting men of learning. Others have stylized flowers for women and some tiny books for scholars. The inscriptions are poetic, one says. He went to rest as a guest of the night, with dreams still in his pocket. A boy sits beneath a tree nearby, copying one of the inscriptions into a notebook. You ask why. My teacher says words from the dead are still breathing, he replies. You walk further in. A breeze brushes past. The fig leaves above rattle like a soft applause. A woman is placing dates and almonds on a grave. She's not crying, she's talking. Telling someone about her day, about the neighbor's goat, about the new apprentice at the bakery who oversalted everything and blushed the color of tomatoes. You pass without intruding. Nearby, a stone bench sits half in sun, half in shadow. You sit. Again. This place invites stillness like a host pressing a second cup of tea into your hand. Sleep and death were cousins in Ottoman culture, both regarded not as endings but transitions. To sleep is to rehearse return, one scholar once wrote. To wake is to trust that the world continued while you disappeared. Historians still debate whether this closeness to death made people braver or simply more poetic. What's clear is that rest was not an indulgence. It was woven into the rhythm of mortality. You lean your head back. A bird lands on the edge of the bench, tilts its head at you, then flies away without judgment. In your pocket, the card from the calligrapher still smells faintly of ink and rose oil. And for the first time in days, or perhaps in centuries, you feel no pressure to do anything but exist. To be here, breathing in a garden of names beneath the wide patience of the sky. The mosque in the distance begins its call, the late afternoon prayer. The voice is low, steady, almost like a lullaby spoken rather than sung. And as you rise reluctantly, gently, you realize something. This city doesn't put you to sleep. It teaches you how to sleep. How to pause. How to fold yourself into time, like a blanket put away for tomorrow's comfort. You walk on lighters, and the shadows walk with you. As the light begins to dip again, sliding off rooftops like warm silk. The day doesn't end here with a bang, it bows out politely like an actor with reverence for the audience. You walk through a neighborhood that smells of wood smoke, coriander, and the faint sweetness of honey that's cooled on a tray too long. This is the time just before the sunset prayer. In Ottoman cities, it was considered the golden hush. Not because it was quiet, but because people became quieter. Even the street vendors lowered their voices, even the pigeons seemed to coo more gently. The whole city, it seems, prepares itself for something sacred. You turn into a narrow lane where windows are open just enough to let the day leave. Inside, families are gathering in rooms filled with warm rugs and low tables. A young girl adjusts the position of a single candle 3 times, not because it matters, but because it feels important. As a mother calls to her children from the courtyard, her voice soft but firm. Come, it's almost time. And you understand, she doesn't mean dinner. She means pause. She means presence. You pass a small open-air kitchen where 2 men are cooking over a charcoal stove. They wear aprons covered in cumin and joy. They speak in half-sentences, trading jokes and opinions as they roll grape leaves and slice pickled beets into decorative spirals. One of them hums a melody you don't recognize but want to remember. As the sun melts into the sea, lanterns begin to blink alive like cautious stars. A boy lights each one outside his home, pausing between them as if listening to the silence in between the flickers. 1, 2, 3, each flame a word. The sentence of night begins. He sees you watching, My grandfather says light is something we owe each other, he says, especially after dark. You nod, that sounds exactly right. You sit on a carved stone bench as the first notes of the call to rise into the air, not as a command, but as a permission slip to rest. The muezzin's voice slips between buildings like cool water in cupped hands. In the homes around you, the rhythm shifts. Hands are washed, prayer rugs unrolled, bread uncovered. The iftar meal, though typically associated with Ramadan, had echoes every evening in Ottoman homes. Olives, soup, rice, fruit, maybe something sweet if the day had been kind. And always, always tea. Historians still discuss whether the evening meal was ever purely about food. Most agree it was. It was about gathering after separation, about sitting down across from someone and saying without words, "We're still here. We made it through the light." The candle the girl adjusted earlier is now lit. Its flame dances in the reflection of a copper teapot. You watch as a father tears a piece of bread and hands it to his son, then eats only after the boy takes his first bite. A ritual so small it feels enormous. And in that moment, surrounded by flickering lanterns, cooling stone, and the soft sounds of shared food, you feel something rise inside you. It isn't nostalgia, it's not even hunger. It's permission to slow down, to receive, to exhale. You're walking again, but this time the pace is different, slower, looser. The city around you has transitioned into its night self, quieter, more reflective, but still very much alive. Shops are closing with soft clatters. Metal shutters echo once before falling still. A shopkeeper waters the threshold of his store as if sending it to sleep. Another stacks chairs outside a tea house, pausing every so often to sip from a chipped cup and stare into the middle distance. And then you hear it, music. Not loud, not boastful. Just the distant strum of a saz played by someone who isn't trying to perform. They're just remembering something. You follow the sound down an alley where a man leans against a step, plucking notes from strings with fingers more patient than time. He doesn't stop when you approach. Instead, he shifts his weight slightly, making room for you on the stone beside him. You sit. He plays a tune full of curves and silences. It doesn't end. It just loops in circles, like sleep, like memory, like the city itself. I learned this from my uncle, he says eventually. He played it every night before he slept, said it kept his dreams clean. You ask if it worked. He smiles, his wife said no. The two of you laugh softly. A cat weaves between your legs. Someone in the distance is frying something that smells like cinnamon and cardamom. In the Ottoman world, night wasn't a blank space, it was a structured continuation. There were books to read, letters to write, stories to share. Scholars often did their deepest thinking after sunset, not because it was quiet, but because the world no longer expected anything of them. One Ottoman philosopher wrote, "The mind opens when the noise closes." You sit there with the musician as stars gather above like a council of the very old. The moon is only a sliver, but somehow it provides more than enough light. A woman walks past carrying a tray covered in a delicate cloth. You can just make out the outline of dates and small pastries, perhaps, or she's taking them to a neighbor who lost his mother 2 weeks ago. There's no special occasion, just evening and memory. Historians still wonder how such routines became so universal in Ottoman cities. how entire neighborhoods seem to synchronize without being told. The theory is that people paid attention to each other more than to clocks. And here now in this sliver of the night that theory breathes. Everything moves not on schedule but in sync. You look up, the stars are brightening. The city is humming softly, kindly. And so, for no reason at all, you begin to feel sleepy. Not because you're tired, but because the night has made room for you in its rhythm. The streetlights now wear halos. Soft yellow pools ripple under them on the cobblestone, inviting footsteps not with urgency, but with the kind of suggestion that says, if you're still awake, come sit a while. Well, you accept. You make your way to a quiet, a public square, but not the bustling kind. This one is more like a pause that architecture took on purpose. A tree grows in the middle, old and thick, its trunk hollowed just enough to house secrets. Stone benches circle it like guardians, or maybe like friends who run out of things to say but don't mind the silence. A group of old men are seated there, their hands clasped around walking sticks and glass cups alike. Their words come slow, like they've been aging all day and now are finally ready to be poured. One of them gestures to you. Come, you look like someone who remembers how to listen. You said. The conversation is not dramatic. They talk about bread prices, about someone's daughter's wedding next month, about the new baker who still can't get the crust right. But the tone is a lullaby for the restless. The cadence is perfect. It's every few minutes someone chuckles, no one laughs loudly. Loudness is a young man's attempt at mattering. Here, meaning is carried in pauses. One of the men stands, disappears into the dark, and returns with a tray of dried mulberries and almonds. He hands them out without fuss. You take a handful. They crunch gently between your teeth. This isn't it's just night being shared. Ottoman social life, especially among elders, didn't retire with the sun. If anything, it shifted into its most honest form. These post-dinner gatherings on benches at fountains beneath trees were where truths were told softly and the stories sharpened into mirrors. One of the men begins telling a tale. There was once a man who dreamed every night of a field he had never seen, and one day he decided to walk until the field found him. You don't hear the end of the story. You don't need to. It's the kind of story that grows roots just from being heard. A dog walks past, no leash, no destination, just passing through. You lean back against the cool stone, the tree rustles overhead. The moon, nearly half now, sits like a boat moored in an invisible harbor. One of the men begins humming. No words, just a tune. Historians still puzzle over how cities so large maintained such interpersonal smallness. But if you've ever sat in a square like this, you'd understand. Public space wasn't for passing through, it was for returning to. You yawn, the man beside you smiles. The city will keep going, you can rest. You nod. Maybe just for a moment. You open your eyes, not startled, not groggy, just aware. The men are gone, the is empty. But the air still carries the shape of their voices like warm stones where someone once sat. You walk again, the world now wrapped in a deeper quiet. Only the essential noises remain, the creak of a shutter in the wind, the distant roll of waves against stone, the breath of the city itself, slow, methodical, unbothered. This is deep night, the time that isn't quite yesterday or today. The Ottomans called this the hour of the quiet souls. It's not eerie, it's not suspenseful. It's a spiritual softness. A time for poets, bakers, imams, mothers of sick children, and the occasional insomniac with thoughts too big to sleep through. You pass by a candle still flickering in the window of a home. A man is inside, seated on the floor, copying text from a scroll into a fresh leather-bound book. He's not writing for money or fame. He's writing because the words are old and old things deserve memory. Oh, he sees you, doesn't speak, just nods as if to say, "You too are part of this quiet." You continue down the alley. A small door opens and a cat slips out, dragging a string of yarn as if it were a trophy. No one follows. The cat owns the night. You find a Sufi lodge, its stone walls bathed in moonlight. Inside, a faint drumbeat echoes, not rhythmic like a march, but like a heartbeat remembering its own rhythm. A man is seated at the doorway, turning prayer beads one by one. He smiles without looking at you. In Ottoman times, this hour was considered the most divine of intervals. The prophet was believed to rise in the third part of the night for private prayer. Many followed the tradition, not out of obligation, but because some thoughts can only be met in stillness. You pass another home where the window is cracked just wide enough to release the sound of lullabies. A mother sings to a child who is probably already asleep, but the song continues. Because sometimes songs are not for the child, they're for the singer. Historians don't know what most of these nights looked like. There were no censuses at 3 a.m., no journals kept by quiet cats. But based on the architecture, the letters, the way prayer schedules aligned with moonlight and silence, they guess. And the guess is this: that the Ottoman night was as intentional as its day. That it folded people into itself not to hide them, but to keep them safe. You walk slowly now, your limbs starting to ask permission to rest. Your mind no longer races, it drifts. The calligrapher's moonlight card is still in your pocket. You take it out. In the dark, the ink glows faintly, impossibly, like it remembers what it meant to say even if you've forgotten how to read it. You find a bench beneath a pomegranate tree. Sid, breathe. Close your eyes. You're not alone. The city holds you. And night in all its silence stays awake so you don't have to. You dream, but not the kind of dream that pulls you apart or turns your teeth into coins. This one is slow, warm. It smells like bread and fig leaves, like calligraphy ink, and like all the scents that stayed on your clothes from the long, soft day. In the dream, the city breathes under you. It doesn't rush, doesn't flash, doesn't demand. It waits like it always has for you to catch up. You are walking again, but your feet barely touch the ground. You glide past fountains and faded stone arches, their names long forgotten but their moods preserved in moss. You pass the baker with flour on his hands, still humming. The lantern still swings by the tea vendor's door. Somewhere a woman reads a poem aloud, not because anyone asked, but because it was time. You wake slowly, not startled, just returned. The sky is still dark, but paler now, shifting toward that strange color that only exists for 5 minutes before dawn, a mix of lavender, ash, and the memory of gold. You're not sure how long you slept on that bench beneath the pomegranate tree. The world doesn't punish you for not knowing. In Ottoman rhythm, sleep was never treated like a crime against productivity. It was as vital as prayer, as necessary as breath. The scent of cardamom drifts in from somewhere nearby. You follow it to a small kitchen tucked beside a mosque's outer wall. A woman with her sleeves rolled up is stirring something in a brass pot. You woke just in time, she says without looking. The morning is still deciding whether to arrive. She hands you a small bowl of rice pudding still warm from the stove. Not sweetened heavily, just kissed with rose. You eat slowly as if any faster would offend the spoon. People think night is for sleeping, she continues. But it's not. Night is for listening to what the day refused to tell you. You nod, though you're still half in dream. In this early hour, Istanbul becomes soft again. Fewer voices, slower footsteps. You walk to the edge of the square where a man is lighting the first lanterns of the new day, one by one, even though dawn is moments away. You ask him why. It's not about the light, he says, it's about the gesture. Historians still argue whether these pre-dawn moments, prayer, quiet work, were driven more by faith or function. But documents from travelers, letters from scholars, even street poems etched into courtyard tiles all seem to agree on one thing. The city belonged to the still and the slow, especially right before it woke up. You sip a cup of water poured from a ceramic jug left on a doorstep for strangers. It tastes like time. It tastes like the hours between hours. And in your chest, something settles. The world hasn't asked you to run yet. And even when it does, you'll know how to walk slowly again. The sky ripens now, not just lightening, but blooming. It spills gold from one rooftop to the next, brushing the domes, highlighting cracked, kissing every minaret with gentle urgency. You're back near the bridge, though it looks different at this hour. Not because the building's changed, but because you have, everything looks softer now, more forgivable. The fishermen line the railing, even though it's too early for serious biting. They aren't here for the fish. They're here for the habit, for the rhythm of casting and reeling, for the chance to nod at each other across the rail in mutual silent understanding. You stand beside them. One hands you a piece of bread to crumble into the water. They like it better than bait, he says, grinning. Also, I ran out of bait. Below the moves like an old lullaby rewritten as a tide. Fairies drift across it slowly, like pages being turned one chapter at a time. Across the water, a call to prayer rises, not the day's first, but the one that matters most to the sky. This call is longer, more melodic, more of an announcement. We're beginning again. You sit at the base of the bridge, your legs dangling over the water. The city wakes not all at once, but like a poem clearing its throat. A cart rolls. A window opens. A bird loses its mind with song. And yet no one hurries, because here in this rhythm, even urgency must wait its turn. You take out the moonlight calligraphy card from your pocket. Somehow the ink hasn't faded. You read it again. It says nothing you haven't already lived. But seeing it in writing helps. Historians still try to define Ottoman identity through its laws, wars, art, and rulers. But if you sit in this moment, on this bridge with this tea next to these fishermen, you start to suspect that identity was less about borders and more about timing. The empire, as vast and flawed and complicated as it was, knew something modern life often forgets. That time is not something you manage. It's something you enter. Like a garden, like sleep, like love. You rise, stretch, breathe. You have lived a whole day in someone else's rhythm. And now you carry it with you. Not as a lesson, but as a permission slip. To move slower. To rest more often. To see the sacred in the silence. The city is awake now. So are you. But both of you remember the night. The world is fully lit now, but it feels different than any morning you've ever lived through. Not because the sun has changed or the city or even your pace, but because something inside you is now moving slower, deliberately, and it refuses to be rushed. You pass through a narrow gate into a courtyard garden behind a public library, tucked between two schools and a soap vendor's stall. A gardener, bent nearly in half with age, is plucking weeds from between flagstones one by one, humming something that might be a prayer or might just be the melody of patience. He looks up. You look rested, he says. You smile. I slept. He nods like that's the most impressive thing he's heard all week. In the corner of the garden, a plane tree older than memory spreads its arms wide, shading the benches below. You sit under it. The wood beneath you is warm from the sun already, and the breeze carries the scent of lemon blossoms from somewhere beyond the wall. A boy arrives, maybe 10 years old, carrying a wooden box filled with handwritten letters. He places the box under the tree and begins sorting them, not to deliver but to read. One letter at a time, out loud to no one. Each letter begins the same. As if you are reading this, the morning has found you. The letters are from a forgotten era, maybe from lovers, maybe from strangers, maybe never meant to be sent. But they're being read now, aloud to the plane tree and the birds and the wind, and that seems to be enough. You ask where he got them. They were stored in the basement of the mosque for a long time, he says. Nobody wanted to throw them away, so I read them. It's like praying with someone else's memory. He offers you ones. You read it. It begins with a recipe. Then it turns into a confession. Then a small poem. You fold it carefully as if it could still bruise. Historians still struggle to categorize the countless writings from the Ottoman period that weren't legal documents or official records. Personal letters, grocery lists, bedtime poems, medical notes scribbled in margins. They were never meant to last, and yet they did. Because someone remembered to read them. And here, in this courtyard garden where the flowers grow sideways toward the sun, and the letters speak aloud to the air, you realize. This city was built not just on stone, but on things whispered and saved. The boy tucks the letter back into the box. You rise, and the tree somehow seems taller. You walk along the edge of the city now, not leaving, just tracing its outline with your steps like a hand brushing the hem of a beloved garment. The path follows the sea wall, where the waves slap gently against the stone, indifferent and ancient. The sound is steady, hypnotic. It syncs with your breath before you even notice. Along the wall, there are patches of moss older than your country, and a bench carved with initials that have lost their owners. You sit anyway. A woman sits beside you, her basket filled with lavender, sour cherries, and tiny cloth bundles tied with string. She opens one and reveals salted plums, small, wrinkled, intensely sour. She offers one, you accept. She tells you she comes here every day after her dawn prayers. Not to pray again, she clarifies, just to see if the sea still listens. You both sit saying nothing. The sea listens, so do you. In the distance, the domes of mosques curve toward the sky like a row of quiet hearts. Between them, birds rise and fall in their own rhythm. Nothing here moves without a reason. Or maybe everything moves with reasons too old to remember. A tea seller appears walking barefoot with a metal tray balanced on one hand. He places 2 cups between you and the woman, then disappears without a word. The tea is strong, bitter, real. Well, like a truth. She nods toward the sea. It's like sleep, isn't it? You can't force it. You just have to be near it long enough and it arrives. You think about the way the city sleeps. How it naps in corners, how it dozes in doorways, how it offers stillness instead of order. How it doesn't wake up all at once, but piece by piece, like a person who knows their own worth and refuses to be rushed. You finish your tea, she finishes hers. The salted plum in your mouth has turned sweet. You didn't expect that. Historians have little to say about this kind of hour, the one where nothing happens. No wars, no politics, no records, but maybe that's the most important thing about it. Maybe empires aren't remembered by their battles, but by their benches. By their tea. By how they let their people rest. The city slaps the wall again. You rise, but not because you're ready to go. You rise because the day has opened its eyes fully, and now it's time to carry that slowness into a world that forgets. But you won't forget. The card is still in your pocket. The tea is still in your breath. The rhythm is still in your step. And the city, though centuries old, has left something new in you. The memory of a life that does not fear stillness. The sky now shines a kind of gold that doesn't glow, it settles. It presses gently onto rooftops, softens the cracks in marble stairs, and brushes over the faces of those beginning their day a second time. Because in this city, morning isn't a start, it's a continuation. You walk down a slope leading to a quiet stone square where a man unrolls bolts of fabric in the sun. He arranges them like flags of forgotten nations, plum, saffron, ink blue, and a shade of green that feels like forgiveness. He dusts each one carefully, then folds them back up without selling a single piece. You ask him why he's not shouting for customers. I'm not here to sell, he shrugs. I just let them breathe. Further along, a coppersmith taps away in a small stall built into the wall of a bathhouse. His hammering is slow, precise, almost reverent. He's working on a teapot so reflective you can see the morning inside it. His beard twitches with concentration. His hands look like they were born knowing metal. You ask how long it takes to make one. It depends on the tea it'll hold, he says, not looking up. Some pots want to be faster. Around the corner, a boy sweeps dust off a prayer mat laid out in a public square. No one told him to. He's too young to pray 5 times a day. But he saw someone do it once, and now he does it too. Sometimes the body learns its rituals by watching others rest. You stop at a fountain tucked into the wall between 2 market stalls. The inscription above reads, "He who drinks from this water may forget where he was rushing to." The basin is full, cold. You cup your hands and drink. You do, in fact, forget. Ottoman fountains were not just utilities, they were philosophies made of stone. Many had poems etched into their marble not for beauty, but to remind the drinker that even water carries memory. That rushing quenches thirst, but stillness heals it. As you continue, you pass a carpenter carving an elaborate chair leg. He doesn't measure. He just feels the curve and adjusts accordingly. You ask how he knows when it's finished. When the wood stops resisting, he says. You think about how most of your life has been about resistance. Deadlines, schedules, alarms. But here, in this city that carved itself around silence, the very idea of being done seems quaint. Historians often call this period of Ottoman life decadent, meaning ornamental, slow, inefficient. But maybe that's just a modern word for complete, nothing rushed, nothing skipped. Even time itself was treated like something you held with both hands, not sprinted through. You sit on a bench outside a mosque. Someone hands you a folded note, no words, just the scent of cardamom. You smile, it's enough. Nearby, a shopkeeper lights incense in a brass burner shaped like a tulip. The smoke rises in delicate twists, carrying whispers of sandalwood, myrrh, and something you can't name but suddenly remember. The incense isn't for business. It's for the room. Because the room has earned it. And so have you. You've circled the city now, not in miles but in moments. You know the curve of its breath, the weight of its silence, the shape of its generosity. You find yourself once again at the harbor where the ships are waking like large, groggy animals. Their ropes creak, their sails flutter. The water hugs their hulls like a grandmother straightening a grandchild's collar. A vendor with a cart of smiles at you, even though you haven't bought anything. He reaches into a cloth-lined basket and hands you the warmest one. This one's for walking, he says. You take it, no money is exchanged. In this hour, warmth is currency. You walk beside the sea, eating slowly. Each bite is a punctuation mark in a sentence made of sun, salt, and the lingering scent of clove from a nearby tea stall. The bread is soft in the middle, crunchy on the edges. It doesn't need anything, it just is. A group of pass by reciting verses. Not loudly, not with perfect pronunciation, but with rhythm. They pause to bow at their teacher's joke, even though it doesn't make sense. You laugh with them. The teacher nods at you, saying, "We teach them the poetry first. The meaning comes later." You think about all the things you've learned in reverse. How to sleep without guilt. How to move slowly. How to listen with your eyes. How to rest in motion. You reach a stone jetty where an old man is painting the sea. Not the sky, not the ships, just the sea. But not even the waves, just the space between them. You ask him why. Because that's where the time hides, he says. Between the waves, that's where sleep comes from. You sit beside him, watching his brush dip and sway. The painting looks like stillness rendered in blue. He offers you the brush. You hesitate. It's all right, he says. You don't have to make it good, you just have to make it slow. You hold the brush like a blessing. And begins. You dip the brush gently into the blue. The pigment clings to the bristles like silence to the edges of the sea. You press it onto the canvas, uncertain, awkward, and watch it bloom into shape. A curve here, a hesitation there. It doesn't look like water, not exactly. It looks like breath made visible. The old man doesn't watch you. He keeps painting, his strokes confident but never rushed. Together, you make a pair of artists whose only audience is the wind and the occasional pigeon who lands, stares, and leaves unimpressed. You smile, the sea keeps whispering. The sun has risen fully now, but it doesn't shout. It glows, warm on the back of your neck, soft on the backs of your hands. The blue deepens. I used to think I had to paint everything I saw, the old man says, dipping his brush. But now I know what you don't paint is where the soul lives. You pause, letting that settle like tea leaves at the bottom of a glass. Then you return to the canvas. The spaces you leave blank feel just as alive as the ones you touch. The wind shifts slightly and the sea responds. Down the jetty, two fishermen begin their morning ritual. One casts a line. The other smokes a pipe and quotes a verse from "And try to be like the night, soft, quiet, and full of stars." He's said it every morning for 40 years. Everyone pretends it's the first time. You realize you've stopped painting. The brush rests in your hand like something that belongs there. You set it down, not because you're finished, but because you understand enough now to stop. You thank the old man. He doesn't respond, but he bows slightly like a page being turned. You stand the long gone, the morning fully awake. You begin to walk, not because there's a destination, but because walking is a way of listening with your whole body. You pass by everything again, but this time slower. The girl lighting the lanterns in reverse, snuffing them gently like memories folded away in linen. The tailor washing his hands before touching cloth. They now running, their verses forgotten for laughter. The baker peeking at the rising dough like he's watching a miracle in progress. The fig trees bowing low with fruit no one minds picking in their sleepwear. You notice it all. And then just before you reach the place you started, the crooked stone where your first steps fell last night, you stop. You don't need to return, you've already arrived. And now, as the story settles, let your body ease into stillness. Like the lanterns of Istanbul, softly extinguished one by one. The sea still breathes in the background, slow and unhurried. The rooftops hold the warmth of the day, without trying to keep it. You too can release what the hours held. The unfinished thoughts, the half-folded worries, the tight knots of urgency. Let them go now, like birds rising from a courtyard at dusk. Noiseless and certain, you've walked through a world that knew how to sleep with its eyes open, how to move without rushing, how to pause without guilt. Let that rhythm curl around you like a thick Ottoman quilt. Let it hold you. You've been the lanterns, the breeze, the watcher at the fountains. You've listened to the city speak in sleep. And now, it's your turn. Let your breath follow the city's slow cadence. In, out, in again. Somewhere a cat turns once in its sleep, and the world turns with it. You do not need to wake up now. You do not need to finish anything. There is no door to close. The city has closed it for you. You've walked the entire day, across cobblestones and whispered prayers. And now, like the Empire once did, you can rest, with quiet honors, and deep sleep. We'll see you again soon. But for now, I'll just drift. Good night, from Whispers of History.